All right, well, you're ready to become an apologist, a defender of the Catholic faith, but there are mistakes that a lot of people make as they begin to do Catholic apologetics. In fact, I've done almost all of these mistakes, and so we want to crystallize today 5 really common mistakes that people make when they're doing Catholic apologetics. And the first one is the most common, and I've certainly been guilty of it in my past, and that is having an emotional response as you're engaged in apologetics. Probably the most common response is one of anger, or getting into an argument, or showing frustration with the other person. Yes, if you're doing apologetics, the person disagrees with you. That's the very basis of apologetics. But you want to keep cool, calm, and relaxed. Remember, this is about compassion. We're doing this with gentleness and compassion. So if we're getting all huffed up and angry and, using body language that's aggressive or a tone of voice that's aggressive, that's not only going to turn the person off from hearing you, but also it's going to cloud your own judgment. You're not going to speak and articulate and argue as well as you should if you are stirred up with this passion of anger, what Thomas Aquinas calls a passion, an emotion of anger. Under this kind of umbrella of having an emotional response comes with it, responses, maybe saying, well, if you believe that, you're going to go to hell. It's not helpful to use that kind of loaded language. Or if you say something like, well, that's stupid, or, well, that's what Hitler would have thought. Of course, people always use the Hitler argument. It kind of sets you up to move you on. Like, well, that's how Hitler thought. Again, no one really thinks of themselves as a Hitler follower or a Nazi, and maybe their thinking does tend in that way, but again, it's kind of bombastic and it's going to turn the person off. So avoid that kind of an argument, and of course yelling. And I want to add one more thing here. I think it's counterproductive to do apologetics through a electronic written medium. I'm thinking here especially of email and text. In email, so much of your intent, your voice inflection, and even your caring can be lost, and they can feel threatened that you're judging them or that you're attacking them. So email is not the best way. If that's all you have, great, but ideally you want to do this face-to-face, and of course I think texting is even worse. Don't try to text apologetics. Meet with someone with coffee or dinner or in a casual setting and have a civil and engaging conversation and bring the best of your knowledge and your skill to the situation. Now, number 2, the second, probably most common mistake that people make when they're doing apologetics is they don't have enough research. They're coming to the battle, but they don't have enough weapons. They don't have enough ammo. They don't have the knowledge that they need. So often you'll have very well-meaning, Christian people who, a Mormon will come to the door, a Jehovah's Witness, or a Jewish person will ask them their beliefs, or even more often, a Protestant friend who's very zealous in their faith will challenge a Catholic on a teaching. Maybe if it's a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon, maybe the Trinity. The Protestant, maybe it's salvation by faith alone. The Catholic has an intuitive understanding that we're not justified by faith alone, and they believe in the Eucharist, they believe in the Trinity, but they don't have a way to articulate the teachings of the Church. They don't know where to go in the Bible to find it. They don't know where to go into the catechism or church documents, church history. They don't know which council that teaching was defined at. So although they have the truth, they're just not able to express it. And this is a very common mistake. I think most Catholics deal with this, and this is one of the reasons why there's kind of a great interest in Catholic apologetics, because we have the faith, we have a belief in it, but we want to be able to defend it with a researched, reasonable answer. So I think that's part of this whole certificate of Catholic apologetics at New St. Thomas Institute is getting the research done, finding the tools, having the resources so that when you make an answer, you can be confident when you defend the faith. Okay, the third mistake that people make is not listening to the other person. And I sometimes cringe because I overhear conversations, or I'm with people in a group and they're talking about theology. And often Catholics who are well-meaning assume, and sometimes assume wrongly, that Protestantism is just Protestantism. So they may assume that all Protestants, for example, deny infant baptism, which is not the case. Of course, if you live in the South, there's a lot of Southern Baptists, so you might think that, but you're Lutheran, you're Episcopalian, you're Presbyterian, you're Reformed, they all affirm infant baptism. So sometimes they'll rush into an argument assuming the position of the other person, and they assumed too much. This can also happen when you're discussing things with a Muslim. I've had debates and discussions with Muslims, both that I didn't know and people who were friends. And sometimes Catholics will assume much less of the knowledge of a Muslim than they actually have. For example, Islam teaches that Jesus, the historical Jesus, although he's not the Son of God, is the Messiah. And they do assume that he was born of a virgin. So there is some contact or some continuity there, but a lot of Catholics don't know that. And so when they rush in and start trying to defend Catholic Christology, which they should, they're not completely aware of the other person's belief, the Muslim person's belief. This also happens with Jewish friends. Judaism has no magisterium, and so just like in Protestantism, Jewish friends and family have different beliefs. Some of them believe in the afterlife, some of them don't believe in the afterlife. You have to actually talk to them to understand what they believe. And this reminds us that it's not helpful to just think of them as a world religion, like as a representative of Muslim. This is a person in history who has maybe various beliefs. You need to be quiet and listen to them so that you can then prepare how to respond. It's kind of like the game of chess. Chess is not played in just one move at a time. The best chess players are thinking 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves, sometimes 5 or more moves ahead. You need to listen, you need to watch their moves on the table so that you can begin to adjust and formulate a reasonable argument and not just assume and rush in. So that's another very common one. I think wrapped up in not listening to the person is the idea of a straw man fallacy. And I would really encourage you to watch our New St. Thomas Institute lessons on logic. And there we study the idea of a straw man. And a straw man is just where you make the other person's belief or religion or whatever even if it's wrong, and you make it much weaker than it actually is so that you can just go ahead and burn it or destroy it. What Thomas Aquinas did, and I think we as Catholics should do this, is Thomas found the best arguments of his opponents. So let's say he's talking to someone who is a Manichaean, or let's say he's engaging someone who is Jewish, or even better, Albigensians, right? They're enemies of the Dominicans. He is going to find their best arguments, and then he's going to analyze and then overturn their best arguments. Because if you just defeat a caricature of someone's argument, you don't convince them. You may have defeated an imaginary opponent, but you didn't bring them closer to the faith. So we want to totally understand their beliefs, don't create any straw men, and then work hard to understand that belief and then show how it's incorrect and then bring up the true belief, which we learn through the church. Okay, so that's the pattern there, and that's how we overcome that third mistake. Now, the fourth one is you don't know where to go when you're stumped. And we talked about this in our lesson on the tools that you need as a Catholic apologist. Sometimes you get into a discussion and quickly you are stumped and you don't know where to go. Again, consult the video lesson in this certificate about the tools that you need so that this doesn't happen. And like we said in that video, even if you have lots of doctorates and you've been doing this for decades, you will be stumped. There will come up things that you don't know. And the best thing to do in this situation is to be completely humble and say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find out. Give me a day or give me a week, or next time we meet, I'm going to try to find the answer to that. Say, honestly, I don't know where that Bible verse is, or, I've never read that document. Be humble. Don't put up a smoke screen. Just say, I don't know. I think I know where I can find the answer. Let me go look and I'll get back to you. People will respect that. That shows an authenticity. It shows a humility, and people are attracted to that. So the fifth most common mistake is not understanding the power of narrative. This is really a rhetorical skill. God made us as humans to respond to narrative, to respond to stories. Think back when you were a kid. Did you want to listen to a bunch of theological outlines and points? Not so much. You liked stories. Think about the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Christ didn't come giving us a bulleted point by point dissertation on theology. He told us parables. He told us stories. So you want to build on that same tradition. The best Catholic apologists of the past 2,000 years, especially the ones of the last 100 years, and especially as we engage atheism and secularism, we need to embrace the power of narrative, the power of story. So if you can work in perhaps the story of your own life, that's so powerful. You can say, I used to not believe this, but now I do. And it's because of these reasons or this process or this journey that I came to understand, say, transubstantiation. Or, I used to be pro-choice and for many years, but because of these events in my life and reading this and studying that, I came to become pro-life. These are kind of personal testimonies that are very powerful, and they create a personal connection with the person that you're talking to. And that's exactly what you want to do. So you want to work in narrative. And this also, by the way, goes back to the first mistake. It helps you keep calm. It also prevents attacks. It's very difficult for someone who disagrees with you to criticize your life story. We don't usually want to do that, right? So the person will listen. They will hear you out if you're explaining your own narrative in your life. I can remember many years ago when I was a Protestant seminarian. I was an Episcopalian at that time. Our parish, which was an Episcopalian parish, invited none other than Peter Kreeft, Dr. Peter Kreeft, who's an amazing Catholic apologist, has written great books on Catholic apologetics. I would encourage you to read all of them if you can. He came to our parish, and I remember one Sunday afternoon sitting with him and some other seminarians, and we seminarians who were Protestant were just drilling Peter Kreeft on transubstantiation and salvation, and all these issues that we disagreed with the Catholic Church. I can remember Peter Kreeft sitting there in the chair, completely calm, completely relaxed. We were aggressive. I think we were probably being a little rude. He was not. He was a complete gentleman. He answered each question, each objection that we had with complete ease. I was so impressed, not only with his theological knowledge, but with his character. And I think that instant there placed a little seed in my heart that eventually led to my own conversion to the Catholic faith, because he was doing apologetics in the precise right way that we're trying to mention right here in this video. No emotional response. He knew his answers. He wasn't unprepared. He was humble. He was graceful, and he was relaxed. And all of that put together makes a powerful witness. And I know that I myself later became Catholic, and another one of those seminarians who was there that day also became Catholic. And I think his witness as an apologist moved us closer to the church. So study these 5 mistakes that people make. Don't make them. Make a concerted effort. If you struggle with one of them as you talk with people, pray, ask for the graces to overcome it. And if you know these and you can overcome them, you will be a better Catholic apologist tomorrow and in the years to come. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks for being a member of the New St. Thomas Institute. God bless, and we'll see you in the next lesson.